So you guys just finished watching the video and taking notes on phase shifts and vertical shifts. So I'm going to give y'all some examples of problems you might see on your homework. So I'm going to title this Graphing Trig Function Examples. And you can kind of skip through this and use what you need to help you complete the homework assignment. So example 1. Let's do y equals negative, actually let's just do positive first. Y equals cosine of, let's do 5x plus 1. So first of all, let's think about the period. Period is 2 pi. And let's use degrees as our domain unit. Use degrees. So technically this should be 5x degrees here inside. Alright, so period, if I'm using degrees, is 360 degrees divided by my value, my b value. Remember, y equals a cosine of bx plus c plus d. So I'm using b, I'm using the 5. So 360 divided by 5. And 360 divided by 5 is 72. So my period is 72 degrees. Okay, amplitude. And then we're going to have equation of midline, phase shift, and vertical shift. Alright, so amplitude is always the absolute value of the number out front, that a value. So for this problem, it's just 1, hasn't changed. Equation of midline. I know that my vertical shift is 1, so my equation of midline is y equals 1. And the phase shift is negative c over b. So in this case, it's negative 0 over 5, which is 0. There is no phase shift. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to graph. Now, very important to figure out your increments. This is what you're numbering by. Is your period divided by 4, cutting it up into 4 sections. So I'm going to take 72 degrees, I'm going to divide it by 4. I'm going to get 18. So I'm going to number by 18. So I've got 18 degrees plus another 18 is 36. Plus another 18 is 54. And plus another 18 is 72. And it says to graph 2 periods, so I'm going to do the negative direction also. Now my midline is y equals 1. So I'm going to come up to 1. I'm going to draw in my new midline. My amplitude is 1. So that means from my midline I'm going to go up 1 and down 1. And that's the top of my function and the bottom of my function. There is no phase shift. And this is regular cosine. It hasn't been flipped. So I'm just going to start here, 0, down, up, connect, and then this, down 1, up 1, and connect. And that would be the answer there. So I have my period 72. I've divided it into 4 parts to figure out my increments, what I'm numbering by, redraw my midline, and then plotted my points. Okay, let's look at another example. Let's do this. say y equals negative 2 cosine of x plus, let's do 4, no, let me change that, plus 7 halves. Okay, so period hasn't changed, so period is 2 pi. Amplitude is the absolute value of that number out front, so it's positive 2. Remember, amplitude's always positive. Equation of midline is going to be y equals 7 halves. Phase shift, there is no phase shift, and vertical shift is 7 halves. Okay, so coming over here, period is 2 pi. If I take 2 pi and divide it by 4 to get my increments, you get pi over 2, and that's why we're going to number by pi over 2, and it tells us to use radians, so pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, which is just pi, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2, which is 2 pi, negative pi over 2, negative pi, negative 3 pi over 2, and negative 2 pi. Now, the new midline is 7 divided by 2, which is 3 halves, 1, 2, 3 and a half, so I'm going to put in my new midline here. The amplitude is 2, so from that, 1, 2, I know that this is going to be how low my function goes, and half, 1, 2, this is how, 1, 2, this is how high my function is going to go. Notice it's negative cosine, so instead of starting at the top, it's going to start at the bottom. So this is going to be my first point. I'm going to go up to the midline, and then to the top, and then to the midline, and then to the bottom. Midline, top, midline, bottom. Okay, and then I'm going to connect just like that. And so that's what that's going to look like. Okay, next one. Let's see here. Let's do one that has a phase shift. This is kind of hard. So if you look at the problem on your homework, this will be, let's see, what is this, example 3? This is very similar to one on your homework. Let me do negative sine of x plus pi over 3. So we've got period, doesn't change, it's 2 pi. Amplitude hasn't changed, it is positive 1, absolute value of negative 1. Equation of midline is y equals 0 because it hasn't moved. Phase shift is negative pi over 3 because remember it's negative c over b. And then vertical shift is 0. There is no vertical shift. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to take my period, divide it by 4. So we've got our normal pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi, negative pi over 2, negative pi, negative 3 pi over 2, and then negative 2 pi. Now here's the trick here. There is a phase shift of negative pi over 3. So instead of having your point at 0, it's shifted to the left, negative pi over 3. And instead of having your point at negative pi over 2, it's shifted to the left. So to figure that out, negative pi over 2 minus pi over 3, if you get a common denominator, that would be negative 3 minus 2 being negative 5 pi over 6. Okay, to figure out this one, I do the same. It normally would be at negative pi, but everything's been shifted to the left, pi over 3. So I go, okay, negative pi minus pi over 3, get a common denominator, and that ends up being negative 4 pi over 3, and so on. Okay, you can figure out the rest of those. Pi over 2, this guy here, subtract pi over 3, you end up getting 3 minus 2 pi over 6, and so on. Okay, so from each normal value, you're subtracting to get the actual new increment. My amplitude's still 1, so there's 1, there's negative 1. This graph has been flipped, so this is negative sign. Now instead of starting on the y-axis, remember that we're shifted to the left. So I'm going to start here for sine. Instead of going up, I'm going to go down. So I'm going to go down to here. I'm going to go up to here, and down to here, just like that. Okay, notice I'm not landing on the black lines, I'm landing on the blue lines, on the blue increments, because those are my shifted increments. What did I do? Oh, I messed up. This should be here. No, it shouldn't. Undo, 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 undo. I messed up my points here. Okay, so this should be up. This should be here. This should be here. And this should be here. Because remember that sine normally starts out going up, but in this case it's been reflected, so it's going to go down. All right? So there's that guy. And the rest of them you should be able to figure out looking at the answer key.